Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? What we're going to talk about today is a utopia that turned apocalyptic. Over the last few hundred years, the human population of Earth has seen an increase, taking us from an estimated 1 billion in 1804 to 7 billion in 2017. Throughout this time, concerns have been raised that our numbers may outgrow our ability to produce food, leading to widespread famine. Some even took the view that as resources ran out, the population would control itself through mass deaths until a sustainable population was reached. As it happens, advances in farming, changes in farming practices, and new farming technology have given us enough food to feed 10 billion people. And it's how the food is distributed which has caused mass famines and starvation. As we use our resources and the climate crisis worsens, this could all change. But for now, we have always been able to produce more food than we need, even if we have lacked the will to distribute it to those that need it the most. But while everyone was worried about a lack of resources, one behavioral researcher in the 1970s sought to answer a very different question. What happens to society if all of our appetites are catered for? All of our needs are met? Well, the answer is simple, according to his study, at least. It was an awful lot of cannibalism, shortly followed by an apocalypse. His name is J.B. Calhoun. It was said about creating a series of experiments that would essentially cater to every need of rodents, and then track the effect of the population over time. The most infamous of these experiments was named quite dramatically, Universe 25. In this study, he took 4 breeding pairs of mice, placed them inside a utopia, and the environment was designed to eliminate problems that would lead to mortality in the wild. They could access limitless food via 16 food hoppers, accessed via tunnels, which would feed up to 25 mice at a time, as well as water bottles just above. Nesting material was provided. The weather was kept at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which, for those of you who aren't mice, is the perfect mouse temperature. The mice were chosen for their health, obtained from the National Institute of Health Breeding Colony. Extreme precautions were taken to stop any disease from entering the universe. As well as this, no bad mice or predators or anything like that were present in the utopia, which sort of stands for reason. It's not often something is described as a utopia, but also there were lions. They're picking all of us up, one by one, you know what I mean? So this experiment began, and as you'd expect, the mice used the time that would usually be wasted in foraging for food and shelter, for having excessive amounts of what do I say? Fun time that mice would have intra-course. So about every 55 days, the population doubled as the mice filled the most desirable space with the pen, where access to the food tunnels was of ease. When the population hit 620, that slowed to doubling around 145 days. As the mouse society began to hit problems, now the mice split off into groups, And those that could not find a role in those groups found themselves with nowhere to go. Now, in the normal course of events, in a natural ecological setting, somewhat more young survive to maturity than are necessary to replace their dying and, established associates. The excess that find no social niches emigrate. Now here, the excess could not emigrate, for there was nowhere else to go. The mice that found themselves with no social role to fill, there are only so many head of mouse roles, like head of household, head of mouse role. And the Utopia was in no need of like a Ratatouille-esque chef, and they became isolated. So males who failed withdrew physically and psychologically. They became very inactive and aggregated in large pools near the center of the floor of the universe. From this point on, they no longer initiated interaction with their established associates, nor did their behavior elicit attack by territorial males. Even so, they became characterized by many wounds and much scar tissue as a result of attacks by other withdrawn males. Now, the withdrawn males would not respond during these attacks, lying there immobile, and later on, they would attack others in the same pattern. And the female counterparts of these isolated males, they withdrew as well. And some mice spent their days preening themselves, shunning mating, and never engaging in fighting. And due to this, they had excellent fur coats. They were dubbed, somewhat disconcertingly, the beautiful ones, if you will. So the breakdown of usual mouse behavior wasn't just limited to the outsiders. The alpha male mice became extremely aggressive, attacking others with no motivation or gain for themselves, and regularly, both male and females, they would attack them sexually. Violent encounters sometimes ended in mouse-on-mouse cannibalism. It's terrible. So despite, or perhaps because, their every need was being catered for, mothers would abandon their young or merely just forget about them entirely, leaving them to fend for themselves. The mother mice would also become aggressive towards trespassers to their nests, with males that would normally fill this role banished to their parts of the Utopia. This aggression spilled over, and the mothers would regularly kill their young. Infant mortality in some of these territories of the Utopia reached 90%. This was all during the first phase of the downfall of the Utopia. Now, in this phase, Calhoun termed the second death. Whatever young mice did survive the attacks of their mothers and others would grow up around these unusual mouse behaviors, and as a result, they never learned usual mice behavior. And many showed little or no interest in mating and preferring to eat and preen themselves alone. The population peaked at 2,200, short of the actual 3,000 mouse capacity of the universe. From there came the decline. Many of the mice, they were never even interested in breeding and retired to the upper decks of the enclosure, while the others formed into violent gangs below, which would regularly attack and cannibalize other groups as well as their own. The low birth rate and high infant mortality combined with the violence, and soon the entire colony was extinct. During the mouse apocalypse, food remained ample, and their every need was completely met. Now, Calhoun termed what he saw as the cause of the collapse of behavioral sink. For an animal so simple as a mouse, the most complex behaviors involved the interrelated set of courtship, maternal care, territorial defense, hierarchical intergroup of social organization. Now, when behaviors related to these functions fail to mature, there is no development of social organization, no reproduction. As in the case of this study, all members of the population will age and will die. The species will die out. He believed that the mouse experiment may also apply to humans and warned of a day where, God forbid, all our needs are met. For an animal so complex as man, there is no logical reason for a comparable sequence of events should not also lead to species extinction. If opportunities for role fulfillment fall far short of the demand by those capable of filling roles and having expectancies to do so, only violence and disruption of social organization can follow. At the time, the experiment and conclusion became quite popular, resonating with people's feelings about overcrowding in urban areas, leading to moral decay, though, of course, this ignores so many factors such as poverty and prejudice. However, in recent times, people have questioned whether the experiment could really be applied just simply to humans, and whether it really showed what we believed it did in the first place. The end of the mouse utopia could have arisen not from density, but from excessive social interaction. Medical historian Edmund Rabsden said in 2008, not all of Calhoun's rats had gone berserk. Those who managed to control the space led relatively normal lives. Well, as well as this experiment design had been criticized for creating not an overpopulation problem, but rather a scenario where the more aggressive mice were able to control the territory and isolate everyone else. Much like with food production in the real world, it's possible that the problem wasn't of adequate resources, but how those resources are controlled. Those who control the food control the people. Those who control the money control the people. Now, do you see? All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fearless. Ciao.